I've traveled to nice places. I've flown business class. I've stayed at 4 or 5-star hotels. It eventually gets old if you don't focus on the relationships in your life. You don't kind of stop and just relish those moments and find the joy in that. You're never going to be happy.
We're live. We're here with the legendary Shang. Thank you so much for jumping on. I'm so excited you're here. First off, how's your day going?
Ian, I am having a fantastic day. How about you?
Living the dream. It's a damn good day to have a damn good day.
Yes.
And it's interesting because a few guests ago, we had Randy Gom on from Infrared Health Saunas speaking all about how sauna usage can revolutionize and is currently revolutionizing people's life expectancy, helping people with detoxing and health. The amount of benefits there are from sauna usage is crazy. So I just got my sauna in today in these giant packages. So after this call, we're going to be setting it up.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun. Is it going to fit in your place?
I don't know yet. We're going to see, you don't really, I have this master plan that hopefully it's going to fit in my bedroom. Cause if it doesn't fit, I don't know where we're going to put it. It's going to look really cool though.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad for you to jump on today and take your time. I know you're busy, could be doing 100 things at once, but I love what you're all about. First of all, personal finance is something everyone needs to know about. It's an uncomfortable subject that people tend to shy away from until they have to. It's kind of like the feeling of when I check my bank account sometimes it feels like I'm checking my report card, You're like, what's the damage? These credit cards have allowed us a flexibility that we've never had before. And just being able to do simple budgeting is very tough and challenging. But all of the finance gurus like yourself, and when I say guru, I mean people that have dedicated time towards teaching the public, because all the information's out there, right? Index funds, investing, long periods of time. If you're doing it consistently, if you live below your means and you invest a surplus over time, you grow these things, but still people don't do them for whatever reason. I'm young, I don't need to. You are an amazing example of someone that goes so much farther beyond just teaching people personal finance, investing, all those stuff, because you're not doing it to put more money in your pocket. You have this crazy mission to help people. Can you tell us what that mission is? Yeah.
So Save My Sense on the surface looks like any other influencer platform. I got my Instagram account, I got my blog, and I got some courses. But at the end of the day, any proceeds that I make from running Save My Sense is being given away over my lifetime to various causes to further impact people's lives and change people's financial wealth.
Now, when you started that mission, has that been a mission since you were a little kid, or did you have this aha moment? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I'll be quite honest. When I was young, all I wanted to do was make a lot of money. And that continued well into my 20s. I wanted to make a lot of money and be really, really rich. And it wasn't really until when I started having a lot of different things happening in my life, personal issues, career issues. And that's when I realized that wealth and money can only take you so far. And that to really get joy, to really find everlasting joy that doesn't change with the circumstances, you got to give your excess away. You have to give, you have to help people. And that is crazy enough. The answer to, I think, a lot of life's problems is being charitable.
Do you feel that you hit a certain point in your financial journey where you're like, wow, I have it all. Like, what else do I need? Like, did you hit a point like with that?
Funny enough, this point came when I felt like rock bottom, actually. And I on surface, I looked really successful. I was in one of the top business schools in the country at University of Chicago. And I was working on really cool startups at the time. And at that time, I already had like 6 figures of wealth, not 7 figures, which is what I have today. But on the surface, well-educated, bright future ahead. And I was so lonely, Ian, and I was so miserable as a human being to be around. So I was even more lonely because people are like, well, we don't want to hang out with this like super negative person, because I come off of a hard breakup and things like that. And I was questioning a lot of things. And then that's when I realized that I was just so focused on wallowing in my own pity that I failed to recognize what other people around me truly needed. And that's when I realized, Shang, you have to find joy, and you're going to find joy little by little by helping people, by inspiring others, and then also with your money, because you got money, you can give away some money. And that's my journey started and developed into what it is today.
It is so interesting that when you give away money, a lot of the times it makes you feel better than sometimes where the money's going to. That feeling of giving and feeling like you've done something and had a real impact. I asked that other question about, do you feel like enough was enough? Because I'm in this situation where I've just been like beaming off life recently because I finally bought a house and I'm in my own house and I have a car and I have a great career and life's just great. I'm so lucky. I'm surrounded by good friends, and this isn't a brag, or I'm just saying that I can't imagine needing anything more. You know, like I feel like happiness at some point when you get a car, a house, and a place to call some friends, the amount of happiness you're going to get off of making more and more and more and more money probably isn't going to come in that sense. These are just some thoughts that are coming through my head all the time. Yeah,
it's almost like an addiction. And I noticed because ever since I was young and started getting good grades in school and going to good schools, the expectation is because you went to a good school, because you're smart, you got to make it big in life and you need to make something of yourself. And I had these super unrealistic expectations that maybe I could have hit it if I put all of my time and energy into being the best in my field. Like I wanted to be Forbes 30 under 30. I wanted to be some guru and whatever, all these dreams. And even now, the pinnacle of where my career could end up is being a really great salesperson and pitching, enough projects to make millions. And I realized that after some point you accumulate all this wealth. And I've traveled to nice places. I've flown business class. I've stayed at 4 or 5 star hotels. It eventually gets old. And if you don't focus on the relationships in your life, I have a husband, I have a child, and you don't kind of stop and just relish those moments and find the joy in that, you're never going to be happy because you're going to keep chasing bigger and bigger thrills that you see on social media and in the media, and you see like celebrities with a lot of money doing this, and we think our eyes are deceiving. We think that is happiness because it looks pretty, it looks glamorous and beautiful, but at the end of the day, a lot of people doing that are no more happier than the rest of us.
Well said. Yeah, I've been living in Miami. There's a lot of fancy schmancy spots, right? So if you want to go drop a few hundred on, a small piece of chicken, it's all over. Wherever you want, go get it. And it's interesting because a couple of times, I obviously go and do that sometimes call for it. But when I'm looking around, I feel like I don't get this vibe that these people are any happier than the people that are at, the cheaper spots. I just don't get that feeling. I think that a lot of that has to do with the company. I think company is so important to true happiness. Now, getting your money right is the most important thing off the bat. They say that you need to get your money right so that you can have financial freedom. Financial freedom to then ask yourself the tough questions of what do I want? What do I need? What makes me happy? Most people, like I think it was Naval Ravikant, he said that everyone needs to get rich. Why? Because you can't tell a super broke person that money's not going to solve their issues,
Correct.
If I just had a car that got to point A to point B, if I didn't have all these bills, like if only I could spend more time with my family, if only, right? But once you get rich, you then apparently realize that there's a lot more to it, but you'll never get there until you figure that out. What are your thoughts there?
I think it's important to cover the basics. As always, I believe that, people should have safe housing. People should have enough food and water to survive. And there are common decencies. Healthcare, for example, big topic. And I agree. We do need money. We need resources to exist, to survive. And money also affords conveniences. It buys time. For the richest people, money buys time. And that is important and that should exist. And I think it's so important to encourage anyone who kind of hears this message to take care of yourself today and also take care of yourself in the future, which is why I focus so much on making sure that people save enough to get a dignified retirement, not retiring, but going hungry because you're on a fixed income. Then beyond that, once you've had that peak point of happiness, then we say diminishing returns. Anything additional in addition to that isn't going to get you as much joy or as much stability as the first level. But absolutely, I would love to get everybody into stability. And I think that's possible.
And it's amazing because if everyone has Instagram, you can go follow people like Shang, or there's a bunch of other ones. A couple of ones I follow is like your first 100K, Finance Josh, just some random Instagram accounts that I'm looking at. And a lot of them are preaching messages that you see in like Tony Robbins, Master the Money Game, or you see in like Bank on Yourself or some of these financial books. But most people are still not doing it. And for various reasons. Now let's kind of break into a little bit. What are some of your tips or some of your suggestions that you teach for somebody that is just, let's say that they have never invested in an index fund. They don't have any sort of retirement. They don't have any savings. Let's say they're in their late 20s, early 30s, and they want to get started. Where do you start to point people to?
Yeah. First, it's a mindset change. Because when people look at someone like me, they're like, oh, Shang, you're talking about investing and being rich because you are rich, but I'm not you. I can't relate. And I totally get that, because there's this common misconception that you need to be rich to invest. And I want to say that's not true. You can become rich by investing. So you got to start. And the first investment doesn't have to be a lot of money. I think my first investment was maybe a couple $100. And so allowing yourself to believe that investing is for you, and that getting rich is available to you, that you're not being blocked out by some invisible force around wealth. That's so important. And then number two, it's also forgiving yourself and not beating yourself up for whatever actions you haven't taken. I've heard the phrase, I'm too late, from people anywhere from ages like 25 all the way into infinity. I mean, people of all ages would come to me and be like, Shang, it's too late for me. I didn't invest. I didn't think about retirement, and I couldn't tell you what the average age is. And I wish that people would stop beating themselves up for possibly really legitimate reasons for not getting started. Things such as student loans can take some time. Having children takes a lot of money out of you. Caring for parents, having a healthcare episode that just, takes out a lot of resources. There are things that can get in the way, really important life things that we need to forgive ourselves before we just keep beating ourselves up and just like sit there, wallow in regret, and then end up not investing at all.
Yeah, that's such an important lesson, forgiving yourself of not getting started before and not beating yourself up and playing what if or if only and all these things, because there's a million good reasons of why not. But changing the mindset to, hey, today's the day. Today's the day I'm going to start meditating when I wake up. Today's the day I'm going to go to bed at 10 p.m. Today's the day. We need more of today's the day. And maybe today is the day to start implementing. So now once we get that mindset right, someone's like, okay, I'm game. I feel what you're putting down. Teach me, Shang. What do I do next? What goes on from there?
I'd love for you to automate everything. If you have access to an employer-sponsored retirement account, this could be a 401k, 403, 457, TSP. Start there. The reason why I like you to start there and start taking, some percentage of your salary and putting it into that account and investing it is because you don't feel it. When people start putting a couple percentages of their salary and you don't see that hit your bank account, then you don't even know that money was there for you to spend. You're like, all right, it went somewhere. And that's my favorite part. If you do not have access to one of these accounts, go online to, say, fidelity.com, my favorite brokerage, by the way, and open a free IRA account today, either traditional or Roth. I don't really care. Just open one. It takes minutes. It literally, people are like, oh my God, it's so hard. I'm like, no, it's minutes. I got a how-to guide on my Instagram. It's so easy. Put in your information, transfer in some money from a bank account, and just start investing. It's, I think people fear the unknown. And people make investing out to be such like a big deal when actually it's literally just a few mouse clicks. And so you got to get over that hurdle and just open the account and just put in some money and put it to work.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like Roth IRAs is what a lot of these books say is number one. You can put up to $5,500 a year, I believe in, maybe 6,000.
6,000 currently. And that amount, typically the government raises every 2 years or so.
Right. And you can write that off on your taxes, right? Because it's going into your Roth.
It's the Roth. It's after-tax money, but all of your earnings will be tax-free. The traditional, you write off the tax today, but then when you withdraw, you're subject to income taxes. Either way, I love these though. I love the IRAs. I love the employer-sponsored accounts because they give you some tax break. And if you happen to max these out, which currently would be $19,500 for the employer-sponsored accounts, and then the $6,000 for the IRAs, go ahead and open your own taxable brokerage. Again, go to fidelity.com, now open up a brokerage and put in as much money as you want to invest because it's unlimited.
That's amazing. There's a great book that I love. It's called The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins.
Love that book. Yeah.
Yeah, he just lays it out.
Yeah.
It's interesting that when you listen to these guidelines, it's amazing what compound interest does, right? It's slow and slow and slow for years and years. Then you get 50K, 70K, 100K. 100K turns into 200K, way quicker than 0 to 100K. And then 500K turns into a million, way quicker than all the others. It's amazing what that compounding can do. But it's more amazing what I've seen is just having any sort of sense of security, the feeling of security. Knowing that if shit hit the fan, you are okay. If your parents get sick, you will be okay. Knowing that should be a reason enough to me, for everyone, to start taking this seriously sooner rather than later. But there's amazing things that when you start investing at even 55 or 60, you can still have incredible gains by the time you're 75. And all of it starts with that mindset. And the more you put in earlier, all it does is saves you more than you have to put in later because you have the benefit of time. Can you tell us more about that?
I often like to say time is your one ingredient that is irreversible. Everything else we can change, but we can't reverse time, at least not here on Earth. I know theoretically there's stuff about this that beyond my level of comprehension. And so the earlier you start, the less you have to put in to get to the same level. I actually literally just did a calculation today. I said, okay, let's talk about two people who put in $12,000 into investments each year. So $1,000 a month. I know not everyone's going to do that, but it's for math reasons. The first person starts $12,000 a year at age 25. The second person starts $12,000 a year at age 30. So just a 5-year difference and $60,000. Let's assume a compound annual growth rate of 5% a year. What happens when both of these people hit age 65? That initial $60,000 balloons to almost a $400,000 difference at age 65, which is incredible. And so that's why you get start early. Now, obviously have your basis. You got to have an emergency fund before you invest because investments are risky and they can go up and down in value over time. But the more time you have, the more time in the market means more compounding, more growth, and also for the people who are afraid of recessions, more time for your money to recover as well.
Talk to us a little bit about the difference between timing the market and then dollar cost averaging.
Yes. People who time the market, they want to wait and wait and wait for some price to drop so they can buy low and then eventually sell high. The people who dollar cost average say, I'm not going to wait for the lows and the highs. I'm just going to average my money, as in I'm going to put in the same amount of money at a set point in time each year. And most people do this on a monthly basis. My husband and I actually do it on an annual basis outside of our 401ks and IRAs. And that means that if it's low, you buy low. If it's high, you buy high, but you follow the market. And historically speaking, following the market is not a bad deal. You're actually getting pretty good returns. If we're going to say not including dividends, about 8%. If you include dividends, it's about 10% on average since the stock market's inception. That's a lot higher than what my money could do in just trying to be in a high yield savings account, which right now we know there's almost no interest in those accounts.
Interest. And the big thing to think about is money too with inflation. And as inflation's going up, your dollar amounts are decreasing. So storing hundreds of thousands of dollars under your bed, right? Yeah, sure. It has its upsides of that you're sleeping on a bed of money, but the downsides is it's literally losing money every second. And that whole change really changed my mindset, right? I try to hold as little cash as possible, right? Like keep it in assets that produce dollars, and then use those asset producing vehicles to then fund the things that you want. And that's what they teach in like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And, you know, the idea that you can have all the fun toys, but as long as your assets are covering the expenses of your liabilities. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yep. Basically, it means that you have a little bit of patience, because it's so easy for us to have shiny object syndrome. Like, ooh, that new car, that new phone. I think a lot of people drop a lot of money on phones these days. Let's just use phones as an example. And we go onto a payment plan for a $1,000 phone. Whereas instead, why not delay that a little bit? You know, get a secondhand phone, get an older phone, get a not so fancy phone, invest that $1,000. And then eventually, as you invest, and I'm not just talking about that $1,000, but all the other things that you do to invest, eventually you're going to get a lot of growth off of your investments, such that it can now fund an even better lifestyle. And the asset base, the original amount you invested, is still sitting there. And so it also covers things like emergencies, and you can fall back on it. So to put it in more concrete examples, in my 20s, I obviously love the couture. I like designer clothes. I'm really into fashion. I'm also a huge foodie. I love Michelin-starred restaurants, gastronomic science, all of that cool stuff. But if I indulge in that, it would be a $500,000 bill each time that I do it. And I wasn't making that much money back then. I made decent money, but not like a lot, not six figures for sure. Whereas these days, I've taken the money that I saved, that money that I did not spend in my 20s, I've invested it now off of an asset base of seven figures. I'm generating value of six figures a year. I'm generating value equivalent to more than most people's incomes. And it's literally, I didn't do anything. I'm not doing anything with it, but it's just incredible growth. And I can use that to add to my wealth. I can use it to give it away, or I can use it to fund a nicer lifestyle. That's why if you have a little bit of patience, it doesn't take that much time to then reap the benefits of it.
That's incredible. And you're talking about building that nest egg, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It could be, and it doesn't have to be index funds. I do index funds because I liked it. I like how to analyze it. Some people do real estate. So some people might take the money that they would have spent and go invest in real estate, become home. They become landlords. So you have a bunch of units all generating rental cash. That's another way to do it. There's different ways to do this concept of putting in a lot of money when you're young into assets that grow in value over time, return cash, whatnot, such that then you don't have to work as hard later in life. When you're tired, you're more tired. Gosh, I wake up with back pains all the time now. And and you have more responsibilities. Like I have a kid, so I don't have all that free time. Then you don't have as much time to dedicate to growing your career as you like.
What are your thoughts on, I think a lot of things affect, especially younger people more so, is the idea that I'm young. This is the time when I got to go tour Europe. I got to go, live on an island and find true love and basically just veg out and see the world. But really it's just a giant money pit unless you're some sort of influencer that's getting it comped somehow, right? What are your thoughts to that? Like, is there a way that you can have a happy medium where you get to explore and travel the world in your 20s while saving for your future? Yeah.
You can't do this and be a monk. Very few people have the personality of a monk type. And the most common question that I get about my frugal years was, Shang, did you have any fun at all? And I said, yes, of course I had fun. You budget for it and you plan for it and you find creative ways to get it for cheap. So my big things were travel, food, and clothing. So what did I do? For travel, I work in management consulting, which I don't travel as much anymore, but it does pay for some decent amount of travel. And then on top of that, you get the loyalty points that come with the hotel and the flights. So you can use that. And then my husband and I use that and credit card bonus signups to then fund travel for free. I ran a photography business for several years on top of my day jobs. So I had a lot of expenses related to that. I put those expenses on a business credit card that got me points and miles, fly for free, go to hotels for free. So that's a huge, huge way to save money. We once funded a vacation worth $20,000 retail value off of points and miles.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Looking at like people like the points guy teach you that, my favorite credit card is the Chase Sapphire Reserve card.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Super clutch card. Yeah. I've used that. And we also have some cashback cards and, especially in 2020 when there was no travel to be had. So we did like cashback, get some of that. It all works out.
But the thing is with a credit card, this is kind of what puzzles me a little bit, right? I understand why people don't have crazy budgeting. Like my budget's like average, right? I'm not like amazingly good at it. I have a good friend, Chris, who's hardcore manages his money, like makes his own Excel spreadsheet. He's a CFO of a company though. So he's like, he's all about his numbers. He knows where every dollar, every cent goes at every single time. And because of that, he's on a trajectory that's blowing away people of his age because he is doing that, saving everything. But he's the extreme end of that, right? Not everyone's going to be there. But one thing that I think everyone needs to get better at is freaking paying off your credit card, man. Right? Like, building credit is so important. If you want to get a mortgage, if you want to get a good car, like for example, when I got my car recently, I got a 1.9%, APR on that. That's like dumb cheap. If you average 7 to 10% in the market, like let's say that's on the higher end, it makes sense to not pay off your car and keep that money in the market because you make more money in the market than paying off your car. Same thing with credit cards. If people don't pay their credit cards, they're going to get destroyed by like 15, 20% interest rates. All you got to do is pay off your credit card. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think there's some amount of psychology that takes over in that something that seems so simple becomes overwhelming because people start defining themselves by their debt. So Ian, you mentioned earlier this hour that sometimes it feels like your bank account is your report card. And so a lot of people feel the same way about their credit card debt, that it must mean that they're dumb. It must mean that they did something wrong. And a lot of times people get into credit card over accidents. And it doesn't mean that you're dumb. It just happens that life happens. So this comes back to this self-forgiveness. If you can start to detach your identity from your net worth, from your credit card debt, and just see it as it's something that I just got to do, and trust in the process. Like trust in the process that if you pay more than the minimum and you throw more of your money at the fastest growing debts, it will go away one day. You do not have to live with debt forever. Then I think you can finish paying off your credit card debt. But it is important. I would hope for everyone to be credit card debt free. And if not, there are ways to do it to help grease the wheels a little bit. So if you're pretty consistent at paying off your credit cards above the minimum, like call it 3 months of consistency, check out balance transfers. I like those things. If you use in the right way, you can save on some interest rates by doing that. And in really hard situations, dire situations, you can also negotiate with credit card companies.
Yeah, that's interesting. What are your thoughts on paying off student loans? Do you think we're going to come to a point where they get forgiven?
I don't know enough politically to know how much will be forgiven or not, so I'm not going to comment on that. That being said, pay very close attention to what the government is or is not going to do. For a lot of people that I coach, I've coached people who've relied or hope to rely on the public student loan forgiveness program, which is a little bit different. It requires that you work in certain types of jobs for 10 years and make 10 years of those minimum payments, and then the rest of your student loans are forgiven. And I said, how many of us can truly forecast 10 years into the future of our lives and really believe that this is the job or the type of job that you want to stick with for 10 years when millennials and Gen Zers are famous for changing jobs just like that.
So true.
And so I was like, I like it, but it's a big bet to make. And for a lot of people, I was like, if you go from the public jobs to the private sector jobs, they pay more, and you budget correctly, you're able to pay off this debt and invest and be rid of this kind of thing overhanging your head. And so I'm more of the opinion of, hey, I don't blame you if you have student loan debt. Not everybody gets college paid for. It's a privilege for sure. But plan on paying it off just so you don't tie your financial wealth and existence or whatnot, your financial, you don't tie your financial future to the whims of a government.
Right. And you never want to not have control.
Yeah.
You lose control. You feel like you're just flailing around. People can tell you what to do. Like
exactly.
They say in The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins, he says, you want to have FU money, right? And the whole idea there is that you can say FU to somebody or something that is, you can say FU to the healthcare bill that you got to drop 40 grand on because you found out you have this terrible tumor and need a replacement or something along those lines. You can say FU to the job you don't like because you don't necessarily need it. You can say FU to these things that essentially don't give you the options. And you said that earlier, which I loved. Having money gives you options. You can get the red one or the green one. You can get it now or you can get it in 6 months. You don't need to wait for the sale, whatever those things are. It's also interesting that you mentioned that we change up our timeline so quick. I hear you so hard on that. It's like, I tell my mom, I was like, yeah, I'll probably live in this place for, 2 or 3 years and rent it out. And then I stopped and I said, realistically, I don't even know where my head's going to be at in 6 months. So we'll see. Like take it month by month. You just never know. You might change careers. You might change jobs. So much can change. But as long as you're consistent with some of those daily habits, like you said, the auto pay into the index funds, just because that's the most proven and safe way that everyone teaches, you're going to get a result that's pretty predictable.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So much to go down that path. And it's interesting now that you've built this wealth, you have this life, you've taken care of an issue that so many people think about every single day. When you wake up, like, how does your mindset go now? Like, what's the difference between someone that has, let's say 7 figures in their account versus someone that is just getting up? Do you feel like you have less stress, or is it different problems, just different packages?
I'll say the one mindset that has not changed is this phrase that I call I get to. And this phrase is literally the magic phrase that allowed me to pull back on my spending in my 20s, especially when I realized I really wanted to get to work optionality and I really wanted to invest a lot. It's taking any time that you hear yourself saying I have to, and say I get to instead. So instead of saying I have to wake up early to go to work, it's I get to wake up early and go to work, which highlights the privilege of employment because there are people unemployed. Or instead of saying, I have to clean the dishes tonight, I get to clean the dishes tonight because I have access to clean water, which not everybody in the world has. And so whether I have 6 figures, 7 figures, 0 figures, I would hope that for the rest of my life, I wake up every day and I say I get to be grateful for everything that has been given to me, regardless of my wealth. But I will also say having 7 figures means that I no longer need to worry or have my life being chained to an employment status.
Right.
So I don't need to rely on a job or even a full-time job or a specific job to make a lot of things work out. Now, healthcare is still very big, top of mind, and that's a reason why I do continue to work a little bit. But many of the other stresses, like worrying about money, worrying about my future, definitely is not there.
Yeah. And that's huge. It's a stress, right? Stress is what causes a lot of disease over time, years of stress and compounding. Basically jumping into a different mindset, allowing yourself to step into this new you and then taking pride in that new you, feel good, look good. At the end of the day, money doesn't define your character, not at all. I think a lot of the time money defines how you think of yourself. You know what I mean? Because I have good friends that are super loaded, but I just never invite them over because they suck. Like they're not fun people and they don't have good hearts. Like they're not a good vibe, they're just always showing off. It's like, bro, what are you doing? You're wearing a lizard on your back, But I also have friends that, are just living life. And part of me is always in awe of them. I'm like, damn, like they're living it and they're doing it. So no one has the perfect story of how to live life, right? The people that don't save think, well, hey, I could be dead in 5 years, right? They're like YOLO. And hey, if they're right, respect. respect, but it is an aggressive bet to take, you know? I do think that there's a happy medium. I think that having you on this show is a great testament that it's possible. I mean, if you just have a decent job and you can save and invest the surplus over long periods of time, eventually time is helping you. And it just helps you sleep at night knowing that if a disaster were to occur, you're going to be okay, you know?
Yeah. It's so popular these days also because I know you speak to a lot of entrepreneurs, Ian, that it's also been glamorized. The entrepreneur life is glamorizing. Oh, it's so much better than a 9 to 5 because you pick what you want to work on. You can choose your own hours, which, yes, that can be a result. But I think you and I also know entrepreneurs are some of the hardest working people ever because you could also work 24/7 if you don't put boundaries on that. And if you reach financial independence, you reach more work optionality, then you can also set more bounds on your own business and say, I don't have to hustle every second of my life for my business. I can relax a little bit, or I don't have to draw as much profit, and maybe you can invest in more interesting parts. I would love, it's not something that I'm doing now, but I've often toyed around with the idea of also doing angel investing. It's just something that seems really cool to me. And it's something that I think about and maybe I might get into at some point in my life as well.
You have so many options in this world and you get to choose what you want to do with it. Once you have money, you can go build a business with that money. You can go open up a lounge. You can go invest in companies or startups. You can go start your own hedge fund. You can do all these cool things. You could start an ice cream company. And if it fails, your life's not over. You know, money gives you options. And it's interesting because there's a lot of different ways to get your hand on money, right? Like some people use credit cards these days to actually fund businesses. And it's interesting because there's multiple ways of doing this investing thing. Earn little, invest long, or some people can earn a lot and invest a lot over a short period of time and set themselves up for the rest of their lives. So obviously there's always ways to improve our skills. So if you're thinking, great, okay, I know how to make money, but I want to turbocharge making money. What are some ways that you can make more money? I know it's a simple idea, but in your idea, like what would you mention to someone if they're just like, hey, I want to make an extra 50, 60 grand a year. And just because I want to be able to invest it all and I want to retire like you in my 40s or whatever.
Yeah. Well, first I would ask them how much free time they have. If you have significant free time, like let's say you work a very corporate 9 to 5 job and you don't have a lot of other obligations, then use your extra time to make more money, side hustle. So that was how I made a lot of extra money, was that I used my extra time and I had a skill. So I went out and started a wedding photography business. If you don't want to do that because you want to have that time for yourself, then if you're in a 9 to 5, the best you can do is to grow in that 9 to 5. So either it is going really, really hard for 6 months to learn a new skill, to take on more responsibility, to show your boss that you can add more sales or whatever and get a pay bump, that can be really, really big. For some others, I would say it might require changing jobs. And this is especially, I've seen this a lot from people who originally went into jobs with really high hopes because it would meet so many of their like personal requirements, but it ends up paying below market. And you wouldn't know that you're being paid below market until you start interviewing and talking to other people about salaries, which I know is a very taboo subject, but you gotta hear it because I want everyone to get paid market rate. So if you're not getting paid market rate, go out, interview, negotiate, and hop to a new job. You don't owe your employer anything. We're not in the age of, I'm not trying to be controversial. I'm just saying we're not in the age of slavery. You have the choice to walk away from an employer who doesn't pay you what you're worth.
Amen to that. And it's interesting too, because there's so many options and I love hearing stories about people that took years to find their true calling. I think Morgan Freeman is a great example. He got into acting when he was in his late 50s, I believe, and then blew up and became Morgan Freeman, right? There's a lot of us that haven't even found our brilliance, right? And that career or that people or that team you're involved might not be it. And that's why it takes bouncing around to try different stuff. I always tell people, I got started in network marketing when I was younger. And the best lesson it taught me was it opened my mind that there's other ways of making money than just working for someone else. It just, when you receive a check from an institution that you earned, that no one can take from you, that you did by your own, you didn't have a boss. It's just a very empowering feeling. And you think, oh, if I can do this, maybe I can start a wedding photography business, entrepreneurship. Maybe I can start scaling that out. How can I increase my rate? Do I need to spend more money on cameras? What's overspending? All those things. And I love that you said like, but sometimes starting a business isn't that easy. Like people, it is so much work and tiring, especially for someone so used to like a 9 to 5 where they get that time off. I mean, it is brutal to see some of these successful people that have built companies, 50 to 100, 200 people, or even the micro entrepreneurs that have like 5, 10 staff. You got to be on it. When someone else is relying on you, you can't just be sick for a week. You know, you don't just take PTO as an entrepreneur, right? You work your butt off to one day, hopefully, have the dream in your life. But I feel like most entrepreneurs never really stop working because once they get involved, they get the bug. Even if they make the big jump, they're going to get bored, right?
Yeah. Shiny object syndrome, which is why we all have our enough line. And some of us haven't reached those. And I just decided to draw a line a little bit early in life and say, I've reached the enough stage in career, and now it's time for me to focus on my family, and that's my personal choice. And all the power to everybody else making those choices. I think it's just important to be self-aware and know what you want and ask yourself, my time and my resources are limited. Are these things, my time and resources, being used to meet the values that I've set for myself in my life? Are they aligned? If they're not aligned, how can I bring those more into alignment? And I think that's where satisfaction and joy comes from, is once everything is in alignment, you feel like you are living your truest life.
Shang, if you could go back in time and talk to yourself like in your late teens or early 20s, you have this eureka moment where you see yourself now and you see yourself in the future, what would maybe be 1, 2, or 3 things that you would have told yourself that could have saved you a ton of time, money, heartache, headache? And a great answer is always, I wouldn't have said anything because it made me who I am today. But throwing that one out, what are some things that you might have told yourself?
2 things, because I'm actually going through some of that now. I'm actually in the middle of trying to finish hiring for Save My Sense to get out of my own way so I have time. If you can scale it. Try not to do everything yourself. I think in my first couple of ventures, I just did everything myself and I made a lot of money, but I also sank a lot of hours into working, which I really could have used to see more friends. Then I think the second is to learn to decouple my identity and sense of self-worth away from whatever it is that I'm doing. Like, yes, today in the current iteration, I'm Shang. I teach people about personal finance and Save My Sense, and I'm a mom, but it can change at any moment. And change isn't bad, nor is a change in my career necessarily a sign of failure. Because sometimes we get so stuck on one identity and wanting to do the best at that and be the best at that we kind of ignore this other path that might be available. And I think I constantly like to define myself by the industry that I was in, the work that I do, and I am very much a people pleaser when I work. And sometimes I'm like, you know what, it's okay to just do the work and also focus on life, because that's my choice at the moment.
Yeah, that's powerful. You thought about this a lot. These are things though, like understanding your own personal philosophy and being comfortable with your own thoughts and moving to the beat of your own drum and paving your own path. All these things just become easier with financial freedom, right? And in a perfect world, I know I would just love to be able to have financial freedom, have my family have freedom, have my friends have freedom, and everyone gets to do what they want when they want. If they want to hang out with dogs all day, they can do it. If you want to open up a dog shelter, which like 90% of America just wants to do, then go do it. You know, I hope this podcast and this episode and all this serves as that push to be like, all right, Shang can do it. I can do it too. Right. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you're at. As long as you start today and start building skills, you start saving money, you start investing the surplus, and still like, you don't have to live super cheap, right? We all have friends that are like cheap. I don't like that personally. I don't like friends that are just dumb cheap. but there is a difference between being cheap and budgeting. And if you can budget for those fancy dinners or for that car or for those things so that you're at least enjoying life, but at the same time saving for the future, you get the cake and eat it too, right?
Yeah. I think a budget is also not a limit. It's so easy to say, okay, I got a budget. This is how much I'm spending. My budget is limiting. And if we can see the budget as a tool for freedom, I think it's a much more positive connotation. And instead of saying my budget is stopping me from living the life I want, I can say my budget is allowing me to live the life I would like for both now and later. Especially when like in my 20s, I had no idea that people on average live to like 79 years old. I'm like, it can't be that long, right? And then I was like, wow, it took me a really long time to go from age 20 to age 30, and I still have several more decades to go. It is actually a really long time. We're going to live a really long time, knock on wood, health issues notwithstanding. And so that budget is meant to set me free. And with the constraint, I got creative. On the foodie side, I also learned to cook, and I cook a lot better now. I don't burn all of my chicken, so I enjoy the food that I make. I enjoy the money that I save there. And also, because I've eaten out a lot in recent months, I realized too that it's not all that great. Sometimes takeout food is just takeout food. And I actually would have preferred making my own pasta or something. And so when we see the budget positively as a tool for freedom, as a process that is just something that you trust in, then it also feels a lot more freeing to let it exist in our lives, that it plays a role. I like to I suggest to a lot of my students, the people that I coach, that you set aside 1 hour a week on money. And it doesn't mean that you set aside 1 hour and you just play with your spreadsheets. It can be listening to this podcast. It can be reading a book. It can be searching for more information online or talking it out if you have a spouse that you share finances with. And I call it the money happy hour. Like, this is not a dreaded hour. It's a happy hour. If you like to drink, get out your favorite drinks. I like to do a cheese plate. Make it fun. Make it interactive. Make it something that you look forward to, because wealth building should be enjoyable for some portion of it. We should have fulfilling and beautiful and joyful moments along the way.
Beautiful. That's a great way to end this show. Shang, I appreciate you. I know the guests have appreciated you. How can everyone follow your journey? How can they plug into your courses and all your good stuff? Sweet. I'm on Instagram, Save My Sense, all one word. I also have a website, savemysense.com. I do coaching. I run a crash course on saving and retirement called the Save My Retirement Masterclass. That's the main course. I opened it up a couple months ago or so. And honestly, send me DMs. Like, if you see me on Instagram and you got a question, send me a message. I would love to hear from you. If you say that you heard me from It's a Damn Good Day, tell me, because I'd love to hear about your reaction to the show and what you think. Love it. You got a big heart. You're such a good vibe. You're such good energy. More people like you need to exist. And we're honored to have you. I'm looking forward to staying in touch. Hopefully we can do this again in a few years and we run it back and see where everything's at. So again, thank you so much to everyone tuning in. Check out Save My Sense. This is the Damn Good Day Show. We out here. We appreciate you. Thank you for listening to another episode. Remember, hope is not a strategy. Keep making moves. Till next time, peace.